Welcome into Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Senior. Hope all of Philadelphia had a great 4th of July weekend in America's birthplace nonetheless. We have a heater cooking up for today's show. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, James Harden deal is going to come over the next day or two. Are the Sixers going to trade for Reggie Bullock, who would certainly add a nice little dimension as a 3-and-D player on Philadelphia's roster? Also, Bleacher Report putting together some NBA trade ideas, which included a blockbuster between the Sixers as well as the Utah Jazz. We're exploring all of that on today's show. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to support us here at Chat Sports. So we start off with James Harden. He met with Sixers leadership on Saturday in the Hamptons. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, a new deal is expected over the next day or so. And Harden in the Hamptons was at Michael Rubin's 4th of July white party with a who's who of celebrities. Everybody was there, from Jason Tatum to Grant Williams, Donovan Mitchell, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid was in attendance. James Harden was, of course, there, as I talked about, as well as his former teammate and new teammate in PJ Tucker, Lil Durk, Lil Baby, Meek Mill. The list goes on and on and on, and everybody in the all-white attire was looking really fresh. And for Harden, we know what happened up to this point, right? He opted out of his $47 million player option, and according to reports, he did that so the Sixers could add to the bulk of this roster, add some depth, add to the wing defense, and the overall toughness of this team by bringing in PJ Tucker. They traded for DeAnthony Melton, which is a trade that I think fell under the radar to a certain degree. If you sign James Harden on a short-term deal worth around $30+ million, it's advantageous for this basketball team moving forward to continue to build. At some point, you're going to have to pay Tyrese Maxey, and also, speaking of Tyrese Maxey, if you're paying James Harden less, you're not expecting him to average 25 to 30 points per game. Embiid continues to play at an MVP level. Tyrese Maxey ideally takes another step, and Harden is like the third or fourth scoring option, especially if Tobias Harris is still on this team. And at points last year, that's when I thought the Sixers were playing their best basketball. As soon as James Harden's contract is made official, we'll pump out a video here on 76ers Now. To classic social media and internet rumors now pertaining to Reggie Bullock. So the Mavericks swingman reposted a couple of Instagram stories saying from another person that he was going to get traded to the Sixers. Basically what the person said, Bullock just told me that he's going to get dealt to Philadelphia. And here are the pictures here. There are two of them. We'll run through them really quickly. If you think about Bullock's fit with Philadelphia, I happen to really like it. And we'll explore that coming up here over the next couple of minutes. This is the type of player that they need. And there's been a theme here for Philadelphia throughout the offseason. Get tougher and have more mental resolve. They did that with the dog and DeAnthony Melton. They brought in the dog of all dogs in PJ Tucker. And I think that Reggie Bullock is kind of along those same lines. So before I kind of relay my thoughts on maybe trading for Bullock, what it might take, and other pieces from the Mavericks that might come back in the deal, I want to hear from you. Are you interested in Reggie Bullock on this roster? It's going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So if you get hit with that YouTube ad break, use it to your advantage. Scroll on down and get your votes in. By the time you do that, we'll be back breaking all of this down. I for in, O for out. Let me know what you're feeling on the subject matter in the comment section right now. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I like the idea of Reggie Bullock. What does he bring the Sixers, and what would he bring to this roster? Something and things that they need. 3-point shooting, floor spacing, and really good defense. And after a slow and sluggish start to the regular season last year, after signing with the Mavericks and NBA free agency, started to come into his own at about the halfway point of the year, and at points in the playoffs, he was really good before I thought that he just ran out of steam in the Western Conference Finals against the Golden State Warriors. You look at the numbers that he put up this past year, including some of the shooting splits, 8.5 points per game, which is solid. You don't really need him to do that much more on a championship contending team. 3.5 rebounds, 40% from the field, 36% from three. Years prior, he was above that number, and primarily he is hanging out around the three-point arc. Field goal attempts per game, 7.5, nearly 6 of them coming from downtown. Here are the pieces that could be included in a Reggie Bullock trade if it were to happen. And keep in mind that in the NBA, you have to match salaries, right? So the Sixers might have to give up Matisse Thybulle. If they bring in another player alongside Bullock, who's expensive, you might have to trade away Tobias Harris. Dwight Powell could come to Philadelphia as a backup big. Davis Bertans Bertans is a solid shooter, although I think he's a soft European who's way too inconsistent from deep. And then Tim Hardaway Jr. is an intriguing piece, a guy who can just be a flamethrower, and at points throughout his NBA career has been somewhat inconsistent, but earned a big payday because he is a pretty legitimate offensive threat. So those are some of the pieces that could come to Philadelphia in a trade for Reggie Bullock, and you'd probably have to part ways with Matisse Thybulle, maybe even Tobias Harris, and Maxi Kleber, another guy who could be coming from Dallas to the city of brotherly love. I want you to rate your interest in Bullock for me right now as we pivot to another question for the audience. H for high, L for low. I'm fielding all of your responses in the comment section right now. While you're down there, make sure you subscribe to the channel by hitting that red sub button. You look at the analytics right here. Last 28 days, we have picked up 1,100 subs. Shout out to everybody who has joined the Sixers family here at Chat Sports. Subs remaining to get to 10,000. Little less than 3,000 at 2,714. Right now, we currently have almost 7,300 subs. Our offseason coverage, in my opinion, has been the best on YouTube. We've been fast, we've been accurate, we've been entertaining. So if you want more coverage like this, hit that sub button or plug in that link, youtube.com/76erstv. To a trade idea from Bleacher Report. And they looked at a couple of trades that could really shake up the NBA going into the 2022-2023 season. This is the deal that they put together for Philadelphia. And it's interesting on a couple of fronts, right? Sixers get a whole lot of offense and they lose a whole lot of defense by making this deal. Bojan Bogdanovic coming to Philadelphia, as well as the sixth man of the year from 2 years ago in Jordan Clarkson, and Rudy Gay, who's a little bit older up to this point, but he's always been able to get buckets. The Jazz received Tobias Harris as well as Matisse Thybulle. I like the deal better for Utah than I do for Philadelphia. Basically what Bleacher Report said, the Sixers save money and the Jazz try to keep Donovan Mitchell and put some good pieces around him. It's been a point of emphasis for Utah to bulk up that perimeter defense. They do so with Matisse Thybulle, and for Toby, I think he's somewhat of an underrated defender and a pretty solid offensive player as well. He proved that playing alongside James Harden. But when I think about this deal, the Sixers get diverse scoring options. Bogdanovic, he can light it up from deep. He's hovered around 40% from three throughout his entire NBA career. Jordan Clarkson can really score the basketball. You look at the numbers that Bogdanovic put up last year, this guy's really good. Now, he's not good defensively, and that's really the problem. But are you a better basketball club on that end of the floor because you signed P.J. Tucker and you have DeAnthony Melton and Joel Embiid as your rim protector? Maybe, but 18 points per game for Bogdanovic, really good numbers. And then Jordan Clarkson not far behind him, 16 points per. He's just a little bit erratic for me, and that classic hyper score coming in off the bench, which the Sixers certainly need. But my concerns would come playoff time, when the Sixers would get gashed on the defensive side of the basketball floor, and by giving up Matisse Thybulle and Tobias Harris, I just don't think it bodes well for Philly defensively, even though they've made some of those aforementioned acquisitions. So here's that trade idea. I want to ask you about it. Who would win this deal if it were to come to fruition? Let me know once more in the comment section. Would you make this trade? And if you think the Sixers would win it or lose it, you can expand your thoughts for me. Y for yes, N for no. Be sure to get those votes in. Sixers rumors continue to be at the forefront of NBA conversation, and we're covering it all right here on 76ers Now. So make sure you just hit that subscribe button as we continue to grow the channel here as we're about year in. Also, we're going to be covering the NBA Summer League as well. Really intriguing players playing for the Sixers in the Summer League. We'll cover that here on the show as well.